A popular and fairly simple cost estimation technique is known as the high-low method. This is part of CBP analysis, cost, volume, profit. So if you know total cost, because variable cost plus fixed equal total, then looking at that total, what is variable and what is fixed? Well, if you understand the cost behavior, it's easy to calculate. So to review the differences, variable costs will change in proportion to changes in volume and activity. Fixed costs do not change. Doesn't matter how much activity there is. The per unit variable cost does not change, but the total will with changes in production. Fixed costs will remain the same, so fixed cost per unit will decrease as volume increases, and just the opposite, it will increase per unit as volume decreases because you're spreading that total fixed cost over total production. So if variable costs are $1 per unit and fixed costs are a total of $5,000, as production changes, the total will change. The per unit stays the same with the fixed cost. As production goes up, you're spreading out that $5,000 over more units, so the per unit fixed cost will change. Key to remember here, the per unit variable cost does not change. The per unit fixed cost does change. Only total variable costs change, but total fixed costs do not. So if you look at it this way, you could say that variable costs sometimes behave in a fixed manner, and fixed costs sometimes behave in a variable manner when you look at the difference between the per units and the total. And this is the calculation on the bottom for the high-low method. So what are we talking about? Well, if you look at 4 quarters of production here, you have January and March with the lowest level of production and the total cost for that period. And you have the 3rd quarter as the highest production of the year. So you take the change of the per units, the change in units and the change in cost from the high and the low, and this is how you're going to calculate the per unit variable costs. So then you're just kind of backing into what fixed costs are. So taking the high quarter, July to September, compared to the low quarter, January to March, the highest and the lowest periods, what is the change? So you have a dollar amount divided by a change in unit. Change in dollars divided by change in units. This is going to give you a fairly accurate per unit variable cost. And why? Because fixed costs do not change, so the change in numbers must be represented by variable costs only. So variable cost plus fixed cost is total cost, and then you take total cost minus the variable cost you just calculated. That gives you your fixed cost. And as you can see, the numbers work. You take total cost over on the left, 6,100, 6,700, 7,900, 7,300, subtract that $1.50 per unit with the total units in that period, and you end up with the same fixed costs. The fixed costs stay the same. It's the variable costs that will change. There are other ways to estimate fixed costs. You can use the scatter diagram method, the high-low method. Least squares regression is more of a statistical model, but that is one way to calculate cost.